So let's go through each one and write what the function is. So what is number 1? Y equals x. Let's go ahead and write that.
Oh, front and back.
What about number 2?
Y equals x squared.
Good. Number 3?
Y equals x to the third.
Y equals x cubed.
Y equals absolute value of x.
Good.
Oh gosh.
Number 5?
Isn't it the
Square root of x.
Isn't there a fraction one at some point?
Mm-hmm. Number, yeah. Number 6, y equals 1 over x. And 7 and 8.
Y equals into the x, y or exponent. I don't know how.
So one is exponential and one is log.
Yeah.
Which one is 7?
Exponential.
Exponential.
Wow.
So we just say b to the x. Or you could say e to the x or something if you wanted. But it's going to be like a number to the x power.
Does anyone still not understand?
B, can I do E?
It's not always going to be e. Like it could be any number. It could be 2, could be 4. So that's why I use b. And then number 8 is y equals
Log B.
log base b of x. Perfect.
And,
So number 2, it flips the x-axis. So technically what it's doing is the original parent function is like this, and it flips down and then moves up 3.
When is the time when it goes into the quadrants 3 and 4?
When it would be square root of negative x. So
Okay,
it would
it's on the
be on the inside.
which one of the quadrants? I kind of forgot that.
It's 1,
1, 2, 3.
No, it's the other way. There you go. You have to.
This is right.
It's a C.
No,
It's a C.
it is a C. How long? Hasn't it always been 1, 2, 3, 4?
Mm-mm.
It's a C.
Nope. I promise you.
I am.
I have been this century.
Okay, try 4 through 6. Okay, so number 4, the starting point says 0, 0, and that's where your asymptotes are. You go right one, up one, so you have a vertical, horizontal asymptote that cross at 1, 1. And then it's in the top right, bottom left. If it were negative, how would that switch it? It would flip it, so it would be top left, bottom right. On number 5, the negative in front flips the x-axis, so it flips down. It's pointing down. And then since this is not in parentheses, this plus 2, that means it goes up 2. If it were in parentheses, that would change it.
That.
Then e to the x minus 1 minus 2. The starting point is at 0, 1. And you have a horizontal asymptote at 0, y equals 0. It goes right 1, down 2. So you should have a point at 1, negative 1. And then your horizontal asymptote is always this last number, so at negative 2. Okay, try the last 3. Okay, so number 7, natural log of x plus 2, so it goes left 2. Where's the original starting point?
0.
No.
1, 0.
1, 0, right here. 1, 0, and then it goes left 2. The original asymptote is on the y-axis, and then that shifts left 2 as well.
Wait.
Why does yours go up so much?
Do what?
Why does yours go up so fast and so much?
It doesn't really matter. As long as it's tracing the asymptote and then just goes to the right. It doesn't really matter. So this is the starting point, goes left 2.
What about number 9?
Number 8 is a parabola, goes right 2, down 1. And number 9, the original is an exponential, so the original is at 0, 1, and it flips the x-axis. When would it flip the y-axis? Where would the negative be?
Outside of parentheses.
It'd be where? On the x, so it'd be like e to the negative x. That's when it would flip the y. So then it would look like that instead of like that. That's when it would flip the y.
I don't understand number 9 at all.
So it just flipped the x-axis. So instead of at 0, 1, it's at 0, negative 1. Just reflects it. And normally it looks like this. So imagine flipping it like a pancake or reflecting it across this line. It's just a mirror image of that line. Mm-hmm.
That's what she did. Did I say that?
So right now it's next to the e. If it were e to the negative x, that's when it would flip the y.
But that's what she did. You said when the negative's next to the x,
Mm-hmm.
it flips on x.
No, it flips the y.
What about number 5?
Number 5, it's technically like in parentheses. It's outside. Okay, so we have a parabola that shifts up, or it's facing up. What's another way that a parabola could go? Down
Or left and right.
or left and right. Exactly. So we're going to just draw one that's going to the left and one that's going to the right. Doesn't matter where, just get some practice.
You're not learning how this function works.
A circle can only face one way, right? It can't flip or anything like that. The only thing that's going to change is the size. So it could be smaller. It could be bigger. It could be shifted to the right. So that's what we'll do, is where it shifts, like where the center is, and then how big it is. The next graph is an ellipse. And you could have what we call like a vertical ellipse, where it kind of looks like an Easter egg that's facing up. Or it could be one that's horizontal. I draw really beautiful pictures. That's the prettiest Easter egg that you've ever seen.
Potato.
What's the difference between an ellipse and an oval?
And a what?
An oval.
It's like an oval.
It's like an
Yeah. And then the last one is called a hyperbola,
That sounds like.
and it's different than a hyperbole.
Because it ends in A and E.
A hyperbole is something that's exaggerated. A hyperbola. So don't call it a hyperbole. That's like one of my pet peeves.
Well, not exaggerate.
Hyperbole.
Yeah.
Never tell students your pet peeve.
It is
They
my
will
pet peeve.
abuse it.
I will. I tell you.
That would be rude. It's Teacher Appreciation Day, Graham. Don't do that.
I didn't say I was gonna do
It's
it.
actually
It is.
Teacher Appreciation
Week. So
It is.
this one, it goes to the left and the right. What's another way you think it could go?
I would
Yeah.
appreciate my teacher more if she just gave us 100s on this test.
So it could go up and down. Here we see a bunch of equations.
Yes, we do.
Numbers 1 through 9. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through each one and decide whether it is a parabola, a circle, an ellipse, or hyperbola. So I'm going to give you some shortcuts as to how you can just look at it and identify it.
Can this just be the test?
If something is a parabola, then it is going to have only one squared term. So it would be like only x squared or y squared, but not both.
So like 1.
So yeah.
Yeah, like number 1. We could go ahead and fill that in.
Which is
A circle, it's going to have both of them. So it's going to have an x squared and a y squared, but they need to have the same coefficient in front of x squared and y squared. Yeah. And they need to be the same sign too. So maybe write that to the side. So it can't be like 3 and negative 3.
Well, then they wouldn't be the same coefficient.
Right, they wouldn't be the same. So it would have to be positive 3 and positive 3. An ellipse has to be same sign, but different number, different coefficient. And then a hyperbola is going to be different signs.
Different signs, same.
It could be same or different number, but like David just pointed out, 3 and -3 are technically different numbers. So
It's like
on circle, like the last part of that say?
it needs to be the same sign.
Thank you.
Okay, so we said that number 1 is a parabola. What about number 2? Let's circle the squared terms. I just see 3y squared. Do you see anything else? Nope. So that would be a
parabola.
good. Number 3, I'm going to circle the squared terms. I've got 2 and -3. Also, something good to mention
Hyperbola.
is if they need to be on the same side of the equal sign, and all of these are on the same side of the equal sign, like they all equal a number. But if the x were on one side and the y were on the other, you would need to move them all to be on the same side of the equal sign. So I want you to make a note that they need to be on the same
Oh wait, I said it.
side of equal sign.
So the number has to be on the other side, or the...
Just the x squared and the y squareds need to be on the same side so that you can be able to determine the signs. So we've got a 2 and a -3. Hyperbola. Why is it hyperbola and not an ellipse? Different signs. Okay, number 4.
Circle.
Circle, how come?
Because it has the same coefficient, +3 and +3.
+3 and +3. Good.
X squared and y squared. Woo.
Okay, what about
Circle.
number 5?
Circle.
Circle. Because they're both -3, -3.
Obviously.
What about number 6? Because they are different signs. What about number 7? Parabola. How come?
There's a 3y squared.
Only a y squared term. Okay, I'll try 8 and 9. Okay, so circle the numbers in front of these squares. You've got 2 and 3. They're the same sign. They're different numbers.
2.
And then number 9, same sign, -4 and -3.
What do you mean by same?
So it doesn't
sign?
matter.
Like they're both positive.
They're both positive, they're both negative.
Do you look at the highest term?
You look at the numbers in front of the squared terms. So on number 8, I'm looking at the 2. I'm looking at the 2 and the 3. On number 9, I'm looking at the -4 and the -3. So I'm just looking at what goes in front of x squared and what number goes in
okay.
front of y squared.
So if it was like 4x squared and 3 y squared, then it would be an ellipse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's easy. Oh, well, you just did that. Okay.
Perfect. But you wrote eclipse, so I've got to count that wrong. It's all wrong.
And mine's weird as a 7.
Same sign means like positive or negative, not
Right.
x
I
squared,
actually
y
just
squared.
got one.
No,
piece of-
same sign means positive or negative.
Please, yeah, I know.
What is x? What's the word for x
If
squared
this
and y
is just
squared?
what the quiz is, then this quiz will save my grade.
Yes, how many
There's no
questions?
word for it.
There's no
Yeah,
word.
the variable.
How many questions will the quiz be?
I don't know. Okay, so today
She knows.
we are just isolating parabolas, and we're going to graph those, which seems super easy, but we're going to introduce left and right now. So we've learned up and down, but we're going to introduce left and right.
Literally
So
feel good.
there's 2 vertex forms. The first is the way that we have always known,
Yay.
which is y equals a x minus h squared plus k, where your a is like the kind of like the slope, right?
Remember this vaguely? Sure.
And your hk is your what?
Those are your
transformations.
Yeah. It's called your vertex, which is like your transformations, how much it goes left, right, up, or down. Then the next equation is, imagine if it were a left or a right, it's now going to be an x equals equation. So it's x equals a y minus k squared plus h. The only thing that's a little bit different or a little weird, the slope is still the same, but the h and the k are now switched. So the y goes with the k. This is still left, right, and the k is still up, down. It's just in a different position in the equation. So we'll get some practice with it, okay?
Wait, I have a question.
Yep.
So when we have the y equals equation, our h, we take the negative.
The opposite
So
sign.
do we take the negative of the k or the h in the second vertex form?
Then we switch the sign on the k as well.
Okay. but
So
the
if
h
it's-
is now normal.
Mhm. A good rule is if it's in parentheses, you take the opposite sign. If like a number is in parentheses, so if it's x minus 2, that means I go right 2 or left 2? Right 2. Take the opposite sign.
Yeah.
But if it's outside of parentheses, it's the same sign. So if it's like plus blank, like it is here and here, it's the same sign.
On the first one, what does K do? Up or down?
So on the first one, H is still left, right, and K is still up, down. So H is always left or right, K is always up or down.
Is it because you're setting it equal to 0?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Genius, bro.
You are a genius. So let's sketch the graphs of the ones that we already have had experience with. Number 1,
Right, 2, up, and
right 2, up 1. And is it facing up or down? Up, and my slope is just 1, so that means I go up 1 over 1. And I only do that one time. So these would be my 3 points.
So I can't just draw the lines, I have to do those other 2
Yeah.
points.
If I get the rules of this stuff up top, like to classify each of the things, if I get that tattooed onto my body, then may I use it on the quiz?
No. Okay, try graphing number 2.
That'd be a waste of a tattoo.
It'd be a waste if I didn't get 100 on that quiz.
Just being nice and giving us a free, very easy test.
Yes.
Okay, so it goes left 1, up 2. And the slope is negative 1, so it's like I'm going down 1 over 1. What if it's not in vertex form?
Then you don't have to do the problem. Yay!
That's so funny, David. You're hilarious. No, we're going to complete the square.
I forgot how to do that completely entirely.
Good thing we're going to go over it.
Complete this.
And please make sure that you put 5 exclamation points next to it. 5 of them.
That will be a break. Not be a test grade, put in 5.
No. Y'all are
It'd be a
hilarious.
test grade to put 5.
You know what's hilarious?
But I'm not doing
The
it.
possibility
I
that I
don't
can
even
still
care
fail
if it's
this
square right. I
class.
still
That's
wrong. I
hilarious.
don't care.
This already looks like a hard test. I want to die.
Y'all are crazy.
David, you said that about every
I'm not
test. No, we're so good
I'm
at being
just-
crazy.
Not smart.
And it's-
All right, so let's go over completing the square. Example 1. This is not in vertex form. Doesn't have the parentheses and all of that. So what you will do is you're going to keep your x squared on the right side, and keep this 6x, but you're going to bring the number to the other side. Okay, so I'm going to have y minus 7 plus blank equals x squared plus 6x plus blank.
Does it end in a -2?
But I don't remember the y.
I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't remember the y statement over there.
Because we haven't done it with equations yet. We've just added it in at the end. But we're going to keep it this time because we're more mature, we're smarter.
Wait, does
I
it,
would-
And
We love torturing ourselves.
are the blanks 9s? Are they 9s, Tommy?
I don't know. Is it
I don't
not?
know.
3 and
So I take this middle term, cut it in half, then I squared, and that's a 9. 9.
Oh, I remember this. I hate this. I hate this so much. Oh.
So then x plus 3, this becomes x plus 3 squared, because I'm just factoring it. And on the left-hand side, it is y, combine the negative 7 plus 2. Then I bring it back over. And if you want to do that in one step, you can. But it is y equals x plus 3 squared minus 2.
Wait, so the 6x just kind of goes away once you split it?
Well, so what I'm doing is I'm factoring this.
Courtney, how do
You want to basically turn, your goal is to turn it into a perfect square. So if I add 9 on both sides, I can now factor it to be x plus 3, x plus 3.
What happened to the 9?
I factored it. I factored this whole thing. So that's the long way of what I'm doing is I'm factoring it. But I always know
Trial and error.
that it's going to be half of my middle term.
Okay.
Now I graph it.
Like.
So what's my transformation?
She got me
Left
down to
3.
And
Down 2.
down 2. Slope is?
1/1.
So up 1 over 1. The next one, I'm going to move the 4 over.
So, you know.
Don't pull out a common factor first. Move the 4 over first. So it is y minus 4.
Plus blank.
Oh yeah, plus blank. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Equals. I'm going to go ahead and pull out a 2. X squared minus 2x plus blank.
Okay.
Now,
Loading.
in the right blank, I'm going to put a what? I'm going to put a 1 because I take half of 2, negative 1. Then I'm going to square that, and that becomes 1. But then in the left blank, I'm going to put a what? Nope, 2 times 1, 2. So you always take the number that's factored out in front and multiply it by what's in the blank, and that's what goes in on the other side. It's okay. It's okay that you guys don't remember this. That's fine.
Oh, it's done.
So, on the left-hand side, it is y minus 2 equals 2 parenthesis x minus 1 squared. So I'm just factoring this, which is always half of your middle term. Then I bring the 2 back over. Y equals 2 x minus 1 squared plus 2. Now, how could I technically check that this was the right answer?
Factor right back out.
Factor it back out. Now, I know that's a long process, but if you are very careful and you want to make sure and you have time, I'm not endorsing this, but I'm saying that you could potentially do this if you wanted to. If I factored it back out, and you guys can just watch, you don't have to do it with me.
Pull out the x minus 1.
I'm going to factor this, so it would be y equals 2 x minus 1 is x squared minus 2x plus 1 plus 2. Y equals, I'm going to FOIL the 2. 2x squared minus 4x plus 2 plus 2. This combines to be plus 4, which is back to where I started. So if you want to make sure you got it correct, you could technically check your answer.
Can we
No.
just put it on the
No. I'm not saying that you need to do that, but just be sure. Something that you will always, always, always have is this number out in front, right here, always needs to match the number that's in front of your squared term. They have to be the same every single time. If it's something different, then you did something wrong.
That's an even deal.
Okay, now if I want to graph this, where do I start? Where do I start?
Left,
0, 0, then I go
Left 1, up
right 1 up 2.
right 1 up 2.
Sorry, not left.
And my slope is?
2.
So I go up 2 over 1. Like so. So I pulled out a 1/4 to get back. So basically you're thinking 1/4 times what equals 1?
-4.
4. So if I got a negative 4 over 1 is what's, so you're basically just taking the reciprocal and putting that here, because that's what gets you back to 1.
Yeah.
So if you're ever pulling out a fraction,
I get it. I just
Okay.
never thought of that.
but now you will think of that.
I just didn't think because there was not a 1/4.
Okay, so then I've got my middle term, which is -4. What's half of that? -2. And then square it, 4. And what goes in this blank?
Okay, it's gonna be
One.
positive 1.
Negative.
Positive 1.
No.
What's negative 1/4
Negative
times 4?
Negative
negative.
1.
Negative 1. Because it's negative times positive. So then on the left, I've got y minus 1 equals negative 1/4 x minus 2 squared. Bring that back over. Plus 1.
How do you know how to make it like x minus 2 so quickly?
Just half of your, it's always half of your middle term.
It's half the middle term.
Then you just put it in the
Then
parentheses.
you square it.
I always just write it below so that on my next step, it's already there. Okay, now if I want to graph this, I start at 0, 0. What are my transformations? Right 2, up 1. Now, my slope is a fraction. All that means is I'm going to go down 1/4 over 1. So it's going to be really wide. I'm just going to go down like 1/4 of the way. Because fractions make your parabola wider, and then numbers bigger than 1 make them really skinny.
Wasn't that what we did with like that Desmos thing with like the ball?
Uh-huh. It was. I'm so glad you remember that. I'm so glad that made an impact on you, Graham.
I don't
Why
know.
are you doing that?
Why am I doing what?
Because it's -1 over here.
I'm not in.
When you get the 4, wouldn't that have to be a negative 4 to make it?
Why does Logan only have 1 point?
Parabolas continued. What if the y is squared instead of the x?
Let's rewrite the vertex form for the x equals. Does anyone remember? X equals. Tommy, do you remember?
A y minus k squared plus h.
Perfect. A y minus k squared plus h. If the y is squared, then the parabola opens left or right. If it's opening to the left, that means that you have a negative. It's kind of like left and down go together, and then up and right go together if it's positive.
And that would be a negative A.
Mm-hmm. You could even put that negative A, positive A. To graph, either use transformations, which is what we've been doing, or solve for y and graph both square root functions, which we'll probably never, ever, ever do, because that takes longer. Because, like, you know, a square root looks like half a parabola.
Yeah.
They would technically make a left or right if you graphed both of them. But we're not going to do that because it's stupid.
Good. Something.
You just say the S word.
Okay, so sketch the graph without using a calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and label my H and K because I don't want to get it confused. So my H is going to be the 1, and my K is going to be the -2. So if I'm starting at 0, 0, then I'm going to go right 1 and up 2. Another way to think about it instead of transformations is like my HK is 1, 2, and I'm just going to put a point there. because HK is my vertex.
Okay, that's a lot easier. The way
Then does it open right or left?
it opens to the right.
Right.
Positive.
So
What?
my slope is 1, so I go up 1 over 1 to the right. Looks like that.
I'm gonna butcher this.
No, you won't.
Already did.
Okay, try number 4.
Okay. So this is gonna be.
So it
What
opens
sign
to
are
the
we
left because of this negative sign.
Oh, okay.
Then my H and K is -3, -1. So just flip the
Yeah.
sign of the 1 in parentheses, but keep the sign on the
That's
outside.
way of putting it right there with the H, comma, K.
Yeah.
So you only flip the sign in the.
Of the 1 in parentheses.
Because
All right.
there's a negative outside of it.
No, you always flip the 1 in parentheses.
Parabolas.
Always.
Yesterday's lunch was terrible.
K complete.
Okay, number 5. So we're going to now complete the square. The process is exactly the same,
Oh shoot.
but now we have a y instead of an x. So same thing though. So what I want to do is let's get my x and my number on one side and then my y squared and my y on the other. So let's rearrange this a little bit to be x minus 3 equals y squared minus 2y.
Yeah.
And then let's add our blanks.
X minus 3 plus
X minus 3 plus blank equals y squared minus 2y plus blank. And I want you to finish this out.
Yay.
So half the 2, -2, and then square it. So you add 1 on both sides.
I just want the graph.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Easier than I thought.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I might just do good. My data is getting.
Oh my gosh.
Oh wait.
I see that every time I do these tests, it's just like 20 times.
Okay, try number 7. I won't. Yes. Uh-huh.
It's on the homework though.
Oh, well, let's wait until after this lesson.
Oh, the notes are already.
Oh, the notes are done? Oh. Okay, are there questions about number 7?
Okay, no, that was.
We're okay?
I
Just
get-
kind of forgetting what to
The only
do.
part
Yeah.
that's confusing is getting like the 2 parts in each of the blanks.
Just remember, whatever goes in this blank right here is always the number you pulled out times that blank. So if you pull out a 2, then it would be 2 times 4, and 8 would go here in this blank. So it's whatever number is pulled out in front times that blank that goes in the blank on the left.
Okay.